Hello, welcome to another episode of the ORG podcast. My name is Cade. If you don't know me, my wife and I own a small little lab here in Texas, and I host this podcast, and we get some really exciting guests on today, like our guest today, Dr. Packard. But first, I'm going to do some housekeeping. We are excited to announce that I think I share a screen here. Excited to announce that we have finalized a lot of the stuff for the conference. So we're having a conference. The largest OrthoLab conference in the nation is happening April 4th and 5th and 6th here in Irving, Texas, here close to me, near Dallas. And if you'll go to orthodonticresource.com and click on this picture of all of us that were here last year, we have labs from all over the nation, Canada, Australia, that come to the Metroplex to come to this conference. And this is our conference, and you can now start looking at the speakers, which we're adding daily to who's speaking. You can look at the exhibitors that are coming. Many of these are well-known exhibitors. If this will load up on me, and then the agenda. You can start seeing the classes that we're going to have. EasyRx digital workflow and wire bending 101 and Mara training. How to automate your lab. Are you charging enough? And maybe we'll get into that with this guest today. So this will be interesting. But with that said, I want to get Dr. Packard on board here. Let me remove this and add him. Dr. Packard, how are you doing? I'm glad you're on the podcast today.
Very good. Thanks, Cade. You know what? Your little opening, that was fantastic. Way to go. Way to go.
Well, you can thank our sponsor, Celsius, to give me enough caffeine and energy to be able to do that. There's not a sponsor, but if Celsius wants to sponsor us, I'll let them. That's probably too much caffeine for me right now. But I wanted to get you on. It's funny that we made a contact through your YouTube channel. And many of you out there know that I have a YouTube channel called Retainer Designer, and I subscribe to all these other YouTube channels, and I came across your video. I can't remember which one it was. I think you were reviewing some girl making her own braces. Yeah, and I came across that, and I made a comment on there, and you commented. I'm like, this Dr. Packard sounds familiar. So, small world, I used to do your work when I worked for Jason Brown at OrthoWorks when I was his lab manager, and we made a connection, and I asked you to be on the podcast as a second generation orthodontist, or maybe more, and YouTuber like me. So I thought that was a small world when we made that connection.
Quite the connection. That it was pretty neat.
Yeah, and I think when we talked on the phone, you're like, yeah, I used to do our work, and I was able to remember it was a reverse C-class Schwartz, and I could remember the exact appliance we made the most for y'all.
Yeah, we have been doing some of those appliances for a while now. So that it was pretty funny to see that you totally remembered.
Yeah. And I remember you're working with your dad, and how I usually start the podcast out is how did you get started in this industry? And it's probably before you even got born, right?
Yeah. Maybe I'll just tell you a little story. Love some family history. My grandfather and my grandmother were both poor farmers. One was from Virginia and one was from Idaho, and they met and got married, and they had I'm new to the podcast and the YouTubing thing. Do I get to say hi like that? I don't know.
Yeah, you can say hi to my wife. That's my wife.
Well, anyways, they got married, and my grandfather, he had lots of siblings, and a few of them had decided to go into the dental field. So by the time he was, getting married, a few of his brothers were dentists, and he chose the dental field. And also after that, I guess he was the only one. He went on to specialize as an orthodontist. So my grandfather was the first generation orthodontist, and that kind of changed their life, going from being, poor farmers, and to, being an orthodontist in the dental field. And then my dad, he had three brothers, and of the three, he was the one that chose to be a dentist. And so growing up, I had a grandfather for an orthodontist and I had a father for an orthodontist. And I got to spend time with Dad. He got to come to my games. He was really involved in church. He was involved with the family. And I just, it made a lot of sense to me. Hey, this could be a great profession. Those are all the things that I want. And not that you can't get them other ways, but that is how it was a very clear picture was painted for me that if you want these things, then being orthodontist, it's not a bad way to go.
Well, and the changing of the lives that you get to do. I remember being a very shy kid, and then I got orthodontics, and I started to smile more, even with brackets on, and I started kind of coming out of my shell. So I bet you got to see that the effect your dad was having on kids' lives, changing their smiles.
Yeah, I think my dad ended up treating a lot of my buddies, and so
I bet so. Yeah.
So I got to see, some of those guys go through braces firsthand, and so yeah, you're exactly right. And even now, right, that's probably one of the highlights. It's a pretty impressive time that we get to take care of a lot of adolescents, young kids go through, braces, and it's during that time when they turn from boys and girls to men and women, and
right,
it's a fascinating transition, and then you add the teeth to it, it just makes a real beautiful picture. So
yeah,
I had a lot of fun doing that.
Oh yeah, I was an ortho assistant for a little while, and so it was really neat to watch. You see them every month, and they'd come in, and you get to see the changes. And as their teeth started to straighten up, they started smiling more and being more outgoing, and that was a big change for a lot of people.
This is kind of a side note. It's funny. Some people get so involved in the braces, and it affects the way that they feel and then they're in it for so long that they're a little hesitant or a little nervous about getting them off. It doesn't happen very often, but I've had a few people that are like, oh, I can't go without the braces anymore. I'm kind of nervous about taking them off. So
right, yeah. I remember, and I was always shocked because there was always that fun reveal time. I get my braces off, and I thought that was great. Now, so that means you're third generation orthodontist, if I'm doing my math correctly. So that's pretty amazing, and I assume you weren't really pushed into it. You just saw this career, and you're like, I want to do this same thing.
I would say that is accurate. My dad, he didn't do a lot of pushing that way. He just kind of lived the life, was the example. Kind of doesn't have to say a lot that way. Just this is how it is. But my mom, she she didn't force me to do this by any means. It was definitely my choice. But she was very, hey, you might want to consider being, a dentist or, an orthodontist. She's there's probably a few people in my family that have felt her loving guidance towards being. I think she helped, or visited with some of her brothers. I think she's got two brothers that I'm pretty sure it's just two that she's encouraged, and they pursued dentistry and now are dentists. And I've got a brother that is a dentist, and then a brother-in-law that is a dentist. So
wow,
my mom's goodness and her influence goes beyond dentistry, but that's definitely one of the areas that there are plenty of people that have felt her influence.
Well, and you're the oldest of how many children?
That's right. I have 5 siblings, so I'm the oldest of 6.
Okay, wow. Yeah, and you have a brother that's a dentist and a brother-in-law
that's a dentist. Brother-in-law, that's right.
And all being affected by the loving, graceful push of the mother. A very political way of putting that.
That's right. Yeah, she set us up for success in many ways, more than just this particular profession.
Well, and I've always told this to everybody, even the normal people, that when they find out I work at an ortho lab or own an ortho lab, the difference between a dentist and an orthodontist. And I always tell them, and I could be wrong on this, orthodontists are the best dentists because they had to be top of their class to get into ortho residency because it's very competitive. And so usually the best dentists become orthodontist. That might be a controversial thing to say,
You know what?
but
I've never heard anybody say it that way before, or I've never even considered it that way before. But that sure makes me feel good.
yeah, yeah, yeah. You
That
were
makes me feel good, and but I do. I mean, I try not to get too caught up in this all the time, but I appreciate the differentiation. Like, that you have to be a dentist first before you can become an
right.
orthodontist, and sometimes people will say, I'm at my dentist's office, and in my mind I'm like, well, yes, but
Yeah.
well, I'm
Well,
an orthodontist. We have special training, and we are the tooth moving jaw, growth and development specialists. And so if you have questions about that kind of thing, then we're your people. Otherwise, the dentists who can take care of your cavities and fillings, and sometimes they'll move teeth, and they can do lots of different things, but there is a difference between somebody who has gone to that extra training to be certified orthodontist, and then somebody who is a dentist that can also move teeth.
right. Yeah. And you got another extra 2 years just concentrating on that. Just like in my lab school, when I went to lab school, we learned all the disciplines the first year, and then the second year. So it was only 2 years, the lab school. The second year, we got to choose a specialty, and we concentrated on that specialty for a whole year, which was great. And that y'all's is just that much more above that. But
Well, I got a question for you.
yeah,
You said you got to choose a specialty. What did you choose?
I chose ortho as my
Did you?
specialty. Yeah,
And
yeah.
you never looked back?
No, because I did all the other ones. I did crown and bridge, and I did dentures, implants, ceramics, removable partial dentures. Ortho, you get to work with young mouths on average. There's less blood in the impressions you get back, and there's so much more youthful mouths and healthy mouths, and you're helping the mouths develop in a way where they're more structurally sound, cleaner, and so I just liked ortho, and I came from ortho assisting. It was an in-house lab tech for a doctor, and then he said you should lovingly, gently push me
Okay.
onto lab school.
So you
And
did the school after you had experienced the ortho. I think that's great, and I think it's interesting too, because I hear from there's no like data behind this. I don't think, like, not that I'm aware of. Maybe there is, but there aren't very many orthodontists that change gears and say, hey, I don't want to be an orthodontist anymore. I'm going to go do something else. But there are
I've
a
never
lot of
thought of
dentists.
that.
There are a lot of dentists that say, I say a lot. I'm aware of dentists that choose to leave the general profession and try to pursue something like orthodontics. And as far as assistants go, that seems to be I don't want to say common, but just something else that I've heard is that the dentists the assistants that have done general dentistry assisting, they also, once they've tasted ortho, they're like,
Yeah,
I kind of like it. So I mean, even in the lab world, it sounds like it's just,
yeah,
there's a lot of
yeah.
good things happening in the ortho world.
It's. I have a joke that I say, and people who've watched this probably heard my joke before. When we were all in the first year of lab school, and you probably have this experience doing lab in dental school, is everybody's got to make a retainer, we got to bend the wires and stuff. And I said, when we were doing the ortho lab part with everybody there are two things flying around the room. One was wires from
Yeah.
shooting it, and the other one was cuss words flying around the room. There were a lot of people that they don't get the wire bending part of it, and they're like, I'm done. Nope, not for me. And
Yeah. Yeah.
some of the greatest wire benders I've ever seen are orthodontists. And I remember watching as an assistant, the doctor I worked, he was doing stainless steel square wire, and he was doing second tertiary bends and stuff like that. I'm like, and he's just dropping them right back into the brackets. I'm like, how are you seeing that in your head? It's such a different. Did you realize that when you were in dental school, the different skill set for wanting to be an orthodontist?
That is a good question. I think I just knew that I wanted to get there, so it didn't matter where I
I
was
was going
at.
to do this.
Yeah, it didn't matter where I was at as far as my abilities, and I wouldn't necessarily think I wouldn't necessarily say that. I look back and I'm like, wow, yeah, it just came so easy for me. Not necessarily. But to your point about the orthodontist that you worked with, was he she? Is he an older gentleman?
Yeah. Yeah. No.
Like how old
Uh,
is he now?
I think he opened his practice early 90s
So
or
maybe in
late
his
90s, late 90s.
50s, 60s, probably 60s or
Yeah. Yeah. Definitely
70s.
60s.
So the older you go, the further back you go, the more that those orthodontists in particular were just like wizards
Yes.
with bending.
Yeah.
They had to, because the appliances were not the same. Now retainers were probably very similar, but as far as like doing bends on wires in the mouth that go into brackets, like that, just again, they had to do all those different things. You had, I now I think the profession has probably become even more specialized. Not that there weren't lab specialists like yourself before. Maybe there were, but I think it's probably become more and more popular. Orthodontists focus more and more on what you can do in the office with patients, and we rely on individuals like yourself who develop an important skill. And you guys are really good at bending the wires and building the appliances so that we can just do an even more specialist part of this type of work versus before. I think the orthodontists, they knew about moving teeth, and they knew just they had to build all their own appliances and bend their wires, at least to some degree. So I have a lot of respect for the
The
older generation of
yes.
orthodontists, because they definitely had I think a broader skill set, and were probably they couldn't maybe I don't want to say afford to be as specialized as we are today. We get the chance to rely on like I said, on individuals like you who have developed that skill.
Right. Yeah. And that's a good point because the orthodontist I worked for, he used to make when he very first started, he had a lab in his garage and he'd make his retainers at night
Yeah, oh man.
and take them back to the office. So he had his own little lab until he found a lab person nearby. Before this is way before I came along, and he actually taught me my first wire bending, and so he knew how to create it start to
That's
finish
right.
because he used to do it in his lab. Now, talking about old, I don't want to say old generation orthodontist and new generation. I would say your new generation. Your dad was old generation. Were y'all able to compare and contrast your schooling? How much it advanced between the
Yeah.
two?
So I think we like to say that there were a lot of similarities. There's a certain amount of like the orthodontic profession that's still the same. That
Mm-hmm.
how you move the teeth, or excuse me, how teeth move, and like that's still generally the same. He was trained on pretty much the similar brackets that we were. I'm sorry, he was trained on the traditional twin bracket, and then in my training we had the self-ligating bracket and the twin bracket. Those are really common.
Right.
But
Yeah.
he picked up on the self-ligating bracket as he was in his profession, right, in his private practice. So that kind of picked up. But there are maybe some new information, knowledge that's come out about when to apply certain appliances, how to do different things, like for example, class 2 correction, the functional appliances, herps, things like
Yeah.
that. Those are all things that he's familiar with, but I think additional information has come out. And so there's a few things that are probably different, but I'd say generally speaking, the way that you treatment plan and the way that how you move the teeth, like pretty similar.
That's well, and then the even the wire technology has changed. Even while I was assisting, they started getting away from stainless steel into nickel titanium, and
Yep.
I called it
Yep.
Bioforce wire, and
Yeah.
it was a cool little trick I used to do. Make it cold, and then you heat it up, and it pops into arch form in front of the kids, and they're like, "Oh, cool!" It was like a little trick you could play.
Yeah, I think my grandfather, he probably did a lot more stainless steel, like those basic stainless, cheaper wires to use, and you,
Right?
again, a lot of bending
Yeah.
to get through there. I think my dad, I think he was probably he did mostly, using the newer flexible wires to do the initial alignment, and that's kind of where most of the profession is at now.
And then finish up with some stainless steel and
That's right.
what
That's right.
I think they called it artistic bends is what.
Yeah.
I mean, just the finalizing touches that an orthodontist would do, and the kid the whole time's going, one more month.
Yeah,
It's like,
that's
I gotta
exactly
fix
what
this
it's like.
one tooth that you can't tell, but I gotta
Yeah.
fix it.
Yeah, you know what? That's a reality. There's a lot of ortho. I believe personally that there's science, but then there's also the artistic.
Yes.
Just kind of what do I like? What looks the best? And so you get a little bit of that, and then you get exactly what you said. You get the adults and the kids who so what are we doing exactly right now?
Yeah.
I'm just trying to get this one tooth to kind of move out just like a quarter of a millimeter or something like that.
Well, and so bringing in the ortho lab part of it, did you find your training in ortho residency? In fact, I just talked to an ortho lab guy in Florida over the weekend that he's actually an instructor and in instructing, and his class got cut last year for teaching how to just make basic appliances for orthodontists. Do you find that the younger generations of orthodontists are becoming more dependent on ortho labs for knowledge on appliances or construction or anything like that?
Let's see. From my personal experience, if I were to apply that to lots of other people, I would say that is probably accurate. I think that we just, because of the access that we have to individuals like you, like Jason, the people that have been doing these things longer than we have, right? And so we can spend our time, I can spend my time in the chair and working on things. And I can have ideas of my design, what I think is going to work well. And I've done it a couple of times where I call up Jason and be like, hey, this is what I'm thinking. Have you had any other specialists that like this design? What designs are you seeing from other orthodontists? Because he's very familiar.
Yeah.
And so I personally, and because I feel like I trust Jason and his work and what he's done for us, that I trust him to be able to tell me, it's like, yeah, this is what we see a lot of other folks doing. And so I like that particular relationship. So I do rely on my lab specialists to work with me, not just in,
work with, that's a great term.
Create this appliance for me, but like work with me if I have questions or if I have an idea. What are your thoughts? And I want them to bounce it back at me. And we've done that a couple times, and it's been good.
Yeah, it's a great relationship when you have a good lab that you can definitely depend on, and great communication. But we got 10 minutes to go. We're lucky we have Dr. Packard for a few. It goes by quick, doesn't it?
That was quick.
But I wanted to bring up your YouTube channel, and I wanted to let me show it so everybody that are watching this, go subscribe. He's got some of the best produced informational videos that I've seen. They're really well done, Dr. Packard. I'm really jealous because I just go live and press record, and I don't do any editing. But you really tend to answer a lot of the questions that patients would have. And was that your goal when you created this, for answering your own patients, or did you want to get out there and just get information out there to all potential patients?
Well, that's a great question. And so it's very kind of you to say about the YouTube channel. And I think the way that it started is kind of a story. We have a connection, right? There is a friend, a family member, acquaintance that you and I know, Scott Simpson. He has been doing the YouTube channel with his family for a long time, and then they were doing some work with other ortho offices. I think that's where you guys made your connection.
Yeah.
And so all the editing, all of the put together, that is his expertise, and credit is due where he deserves the credit. Is what I'm trying to say.
Yeah. Well, it works because your views, 32,000 views on this, just blast mine out of the water. I mean, I can get a couple hundred, but you're in the thousands or tens of thousands of views. So you're reaching a good audience of people that just want to know about this kind of stuff.
Well, so to that point, I got together with Scott, I think a couple of years ago, and just talking about this because in today's world there are a lot of the old way of getting information out to patients about your office was mailers and newspaper, and there's still some of those things that can work. It depends on your area. In our area, Collin County, I wouldn't say it's just we're not like Silicon Valley or anything like that, but we've got a lot of young families and video and online. Those are all big ways to reach people these days. And so we didn't have a lot of that. And I thought that YouTube was unique. And Scott suggested that YouTube can have a good connection with Google and a lot of Google reviews. So we're trying to build up our Google presence so that people can find us. And our approach to this was, I mean, it's kind of evolved over time. We're trying to figure out what people like to see. But I think you're right. Generally speaking, I like the idea of thinking of questions, experiences that we have in our office and trying to get those questions answered no matter if it's now or even 10 years down the road, there's going to be a new mom or a new family or a new adult that says, okay, now I'm ready. I've got a kid that's 7 years old. What do I do? And so the information, you can kind of keep pushing it out there. And I think that there will always be new people that want to know those things. And so we're hoping that this will be helpful, but also we're hoping that people will know that we're here in McKinney and Anna, and they'll come see us and we'll talk to them and answer their questions about orthodontics. And sorry, go for it.
Yeah, I was going to say, doing this YouTube channel and getting out there, you become an authority figure in the industry. People start to trust you. So they get to know you in these videos first, and then they want to come meet you. So
I hope that's how it works. I don't know everything, but I try to know lots of things, and I try to provide. I just made a video about this, and I think it's important that we live in a world like we just talked about that's so specialized and so full of information, and that you can't. It's hard to know everything, and so you have to rely on other people for good information. And that I think, unfortunately, in every industry, there are those that maybe take advantage of information that you have that others don't. And so I'm hopeful that the information that we provide on our YouTube channel puts people in a position to, as they work with providers, whether it's a dentist or an orthodontist, that they can say, okay, I see what you're saying, but I also have this information. Because of that, maybe there's some discrepancies. Maybe I'll get another opinion, or it just puts them in more of a position of power to make good choices about their dental health care.
Well, and that being said, when I told everybody to subscribe, Amy, she's a watcher of my YouTube videos. She's already been subscribed for a while. So
wow.
And so she had the same question. So you're a third generation ortho, Dr. Packard, and I think we figured that out. I thought you were second generation, and it turns out you were third. But to talking about people wanting to reach out to you, she also, Dr. Packard, I have some questions I would like to speak to you with in private. How do I get in touch with you and talk to you about them? You really seem to be on top of things, and you know your information. So you're proving you know your information in these YouTube videos before you even meet the patient. So how would somebody contact you that would like to speak in private about their own treatment?
Okay, so we have, in fact, I think on the YouTube channel it says.
You're right. I just saw that. Let's see.
There's a link that you can click to schedule like a virtual consult, but I put in there specifically because I think this is important, especially as things go virtual. You just have to be aware or conscious of the idea that being in person with somebody is still probably the gold standard of receiving information, because we can talk about, well, I guess, so my point is that I can visit with people online, but I like the idea and encourage people that that discussion is, I wouldn't consider it, how do I say it, official, like the best way to get information is to go in, find a local provider that you can trust, check out their reviews, see what your friends say, and then get the necessary records and let them look in your mouth and kind of feel around, just so they can, like I said,
Yeah.
provide you with the best, most accurate information for you.
And I believe you informational only. You put the right words in
Trying.
there. Yeah,
Yeah,
trying to be as informational as possible. So that and she wants you to know she lives in Alabama, by the way.
that's kind of far.
Yeah. So I think she might have just got some snow. I'm not sure. Both of us were dealing with frozen pipes this
Yeah,
week, so this interview almost didn't happen. So I appreciate you being able to jump on here. And I know we're nearing the end of our talk, but I always end it with a question of what do you think of the future of orthodontics? Let's bring in the YouTube aspect of this, or how do you see your future with YouTube and your practice coinciding?
that is a great question. The original plan was to have YouTube as a way to connect with more people for our office. But depending on YouTube is very interesting.
Yes.
You just have so much more access to people like around the world, and it's a very neat thing. So I can't say exactly where I think that it will go, but currently we're working really hard to try and reach more people and find people that are close by and just be helpful. So
That's obvious on your channel. Just trying to be helpful, because a lot of people will ask me on my channel about treatment plans and stuff. I'm like, now I know who to point them to to go find that answer, because I'm like, I don't want to answer that. That treatment plans, no, it's like people are like, hey, I broke my retainer, Cade, can I send it to you? I'm like, nope, just go to your local doctor, let them take an impression. They can send it to me if you want, but
yeah.
yeah, I don't want to. So now it's nice to have somebody out there I know close by that I can point to that has information ready to go. A lot of these YouTube channels from orthodontists are like, now this is what you do if you have a wire poking. You take a piece of wax and you ball it up and you stick it on the thing, and they have those things that they put out 5-10 years ago, and but yours is a lot more alive and active. Your YouTube channel that you're doing.
Well, for now at least. And the funny story that when you engaged me on the YouTube channel at some comment, retainer designers are like, "Oh, this is cool," and then we found out that we really are close.
Yeah.
That was pretty funny. We're like next door neighbors, orthodontically speaking.
Yeah, and so that we're nearing the end, and I was looking through our comments that we had here, and I think I might know that Dr. Packard. That might be Veronica. It doesn't say her name on here, but that might be Veronica from Orthodent. She was so excited when I had mentioned to her, it's like, hey, do y'all still do work for Dr. Packard? And for those that know, the lab I used to work for with Jason merged with Victoria's lab in McKinney, and they've become this giant thing. They just built a new office, and I can't wait to go visit. But yeah, it was funny. She was like, "Oh, Dr. Packard, he's awesome." And I said, "Can I get him on my podcast?" She was like, "I would love to see that." So
Yeah,
again, thank you again for coming on the podcast.
Okay, this was fantastic. It was a cool, neat first experience for me. You sure seem like you know a lot of what you're doing with the podcast and with the YouTube channel.
Fake it till you make it.
I wish you the best. And then, I should definitely say on behalf of all the orthodontists out there, we appreciate the work that you do to make so that we can do what we want to do in the office. So thanks for your know-how and not just know-how. I personally appreciate people that are kind and friendly, and it makes communication easier. So thanks for what you're doing. Keep up the good work. I'm sure we'll be in touch.
Yeah, and I appreciate those kind words, and there's always some anonymity sometimes between the lab and the doctor, and in fact, I just did a podcast, and he's on here right here. I did dental things. And his last week or week before last or sometime, he's actually an orthodontic assistant instructor, and we talked about the importance of communication between the lab and the assistant. So, and it's really good to hear that, you know, you'll call up Jason sometimes like, this is what I'm thinking. Let's figure this out together. And sometimes solving that puzzle together is a great time to have together. That I love hearing that.
Well, and you know, I know we're trying to finish up here, but I have to say this too. I didn't put this out there. You guys as lab specialists, you guys really are patient with our assistants and the doctors. You know, we try to send you things that are as good as possible. Then you guys still, you know, try to figure out ways to work around problems and situation. And so thanks for trying to make things work and being patient as we train new people and we try to get you the best that we can. And so,
yeah.
Thank you.
And I've always said, make friends with the assistants, you know, as lab techs, we usually make free appliances for the doctors. I also do it for the assistants because I want to get in good with the assistants, because if she'll scratch my back, I'll scratch hers. You know, if I can call up and go, I'm really running behind, they're like, fine, I'll move these patients, but I won't tell Dr. Packard that we're late on this. You know, and then sometimes we're like, patients going back to college, we need this thing turned around quick. Can you do it?
Ooh,
so
those are tough ones.
Yeah. The back to school rush, the back to college rush,
That's a real thing.
Yeah.
That's a real thing.
With that being said, again, thank you for coming on, and we'll have to do this again sometime and spend more time on this. I really did appreciate it, getting some feedback from some actual orthodontists that we don't get to talk to so much sometimes. But with that, I'm going to end it there. And where's the best place for people to find you?
Okay, we have so we have the YouTube channel. We have if you're trying to like set up something, you can go through that Calendly link. We have our website that you can schedule an online consult directly into our office, and then we have our Facebook page, Packard Family Orthodontics, and then we have an Instagram account. I think it's Braces in Texas, at Braces in Texas.
Oh, I have to go follow that. I don't think I follow that. So.
Most of the time that we're just trying to so if you see the YouTube channel, there might be different things on the Facebook channel or like shorts. So it's similar information, nothing too crazy.
Okay, awesome. Well, you got to go see some patients, so I'm going to end that here, and I appreciate you again. And to everybody out there, I will see y'all later. See y'all next week. Bye-bye.